Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Constable Rob Carver, and I'm Public Information Officer for the Winnipeg Police Service. I would like to, at this point, turn the podium over to Sergeant Wes Rommel from the Homicide Unit.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Like Rob mentioned, my name is Wes Rommel. I am one of the sergeants in the Homicide Unit, and I have been overseeing the investigation into the disappearance of Thelma Krull since she went missing. As previously reported by the RCMP, on October 27th, 2018, a hunter in the Rural Municipality of Tache reported a potential discovery of human remains. This was reported to the Steinbach Detachment of the RCMP. In the Steinbach Detachment, along with the RCMP Forensic Services and the Major Crimes Unit, subsequently commenced an investigation that included an extensive search of that area. Ultimately, human remains were located and recovered. We can now confirm through DNA testing that the recovered remains are those of Thelma Krull. I can confirm the area where Thelma Krull was located is a wooded area near Municipal Rd 52 North and Chemin Perin Rd, otherwise referred to as 37 East. And in a general sense, this is east of Highway 12 and north of Highway number 1. I will not comment further on the specific location nor any further details regarding her recovery. The discovery of Thelma Krull's remains and the encompassing circumstances confirms our previous belief that Thelma was the victim of a homicide. On behalf of the Winnipeg Police Service, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Thelma Krull. Thelma's family has obviously been notified, and at this time we would ask the media please respect their privacy during this very difficult time. We would like to thank the public for their overwhelming support throughout this investigation, but we are not done, and we still need the public's assistance. With the recovery of Thelma, we now have a second location that we believe will be a critical piece in connecting the suspect to the investigation. The location where Thelma was found is a remote area and is approximately 50 kilometers southeast of the Valley Gardens area where Thelma was last seen alive. Clearly, the suspect had access to a vehicle. On the morning of July 11th, 2015, Thelma was out walking, and she arrived at Civic Park at approximately 8 a.m. And when I say Civic Park, I'm referring to an area that is commonly referred to as Kimberley Hill, but is that green space between Kildonan East High School and Valley Gardens Middle School that's been clearly outlined in our past releases. We believe that shortly after she arrived at this location, she was involved in a physical altercation with the suspect and was forcibly removed from the area. On that day, July 11th, 2015, it was a Saturday, a weekend day, a hot summer Winnipeg day. The suspect was in that area. He lived in the area, worked in the area, or was somehow connected to that location and had a reason for being there that morning. Due to the absence of witness accounts, we believe that Thelma was taken into a residence, building, or vehicle within that immediate area. So we are, again, asking members of the public, specifically those who lived in the Valley Gardens area in July 2015, to think about the details we are now sharing and report any suspicions or information you may have. And also for people who live in and around the location in Tache where Thelma was found. Please call us with anything suspicious you may recall from the summer of 2015 or with any suspicions you may have. If you have any information you may think may be relevant to this investigation, we ask that you contact us immediately. You can reach our office directly at the Homicide office at 204-986-6508, or Crime Stoppers if you wish to remain anonymous at 204-786-TIPS or 8477. In closing, I would like to thank RCMPD Division, specifically the Steinbach Detachment, Forensic Services, and the Major Crimes Unit for their assistance and cooperation, as well as the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. I will answer any questions you may have if I can.
Do we know what remains were found?
We do know that, and I'm not going to comment further on the extent of the remains.
Do we know how long they were in that area for?
The extent of time, do not know exactly. I can tell you it is an extended period of time.
Like, are we talking like over a year, months?
I can't say beyond that response.
Can you say if that location has any connection to the suspect you mentioned at all in this?
That's a very good question, and I think that is something that is very important to us. One of the things that we wanted to get out to you today is that location. We think it is very significant. And in terms of a connection to the suspect, I think that is a possibility. I think it's a significant piece of the investigation, and is something that we want the public to cue on. The fact that this individual certainly may be familiar somehow with that area, with that specific location. That is a significant piece. I've been to the scene myself, and as you drive out, it's a lot of prairies with nothing around, and then all of a sudden you get into these areas which becomes wooded and more desolate. I think that's a very significant piece.
Is it private land, or can you comment on who owns the land at all?
Cannot comment on the exact location.
How
Can you say how far away from a road the remains were found?
I know that, but I'm not going to share that detail. That's one of the pieces, and it's not as if we don't want to share that information with you. There are specific things that we don't want to share today as holdback evidence that hopefully we get to a point where someone can.
Are you able to say that, like, is it, do you see location for the road, or is it somewhere where a person would have had to go to some effort to get a body far in?
There was some effort, and that's all I'll say.
How common is it for remains to be recovered 3 years after a person goes missing in this way?
How common? It's not real common. I mean, it's these types of, in this type of investigation specifically, isn't common. It's unusual, right? We don't often get these types of things. Certainly, in any case of a missing person, which is what Thelma was at the beginning, often remains are found years, sometimes even decades later. So it does happen. It certainly does happen.
The sketch that was released of the suspect with the bowl haircut, is that person still considered someone who's a person of interest in this case, or given this information today, has that changed?
That individual you're referring to is still an important piece of this investigation. One of the things we are alert to ourselves and would like members of the media to as well is we want to keep an open mind to outside possibilities. And when I say that, I can give you a bit of context to that. That information stems from one witness account in terms of providing that information. We believe that witness to be credible. However, there's lots of variables that come into play with that. We don't want all our eggs into one basket, so to speak. We want to keep an open mind. Like I said, in the event that somehow, some way, there's a piece of that is off, we don't want to overlook some other aspect of a person living closer around there, a different race, those types of things. And I think that's a very important piece that we want the public to be aware of. Yes, that is an individual that is still important to the investigation. We are still looking at tips regarding that individual and people that are similar to him, and we will continue to do that. But we're also wanting the public to be aware that if you have suspicions about other individuals or other information, we want to hear about that as well.
When you say the suspect was familiar with the area, I guess you're meaning Valley Gardens area. Can you talk a little bit about why you would think that they'd be either familiar with the area or live in this area?
If you're talking about my last response, I was referring to the remote area where she was left. And in terms of that familiarity, it's a great distance away from Winnipeg. It's not a location. I don't know how you get there. There's a lot of I guess background that goes into that. But when I spoke of familiarity with that, I was speaking to that area.
Oh, so not the Valley Gardens area?
Valley Gardens area, I mean, that person was there. I believe the person lives there, works there, was there that day for recreation. There's some reason why the person was there that day. Definitely familiar with Valley Gardens as well, but they're going to be more direct into that area.
And prior to the hunter coming across the possible remains, was there anything in the investigation that had led investigators out to this rural municipality?
To that area, no.
Do you know how she died?
No comment. I can't discuss that.
But you do know how she died, or you?
Again, I'm not going to discuss that.
How large of a break is something like this in this case?
It's a significant piece. We've been waiting for a break in the investigation. I mean, we've been gathering tips and information over the last 3.5 years and working on this continually. This is a major step forward in terms of locating her is a big piece. And now when you find where she's been placed, it becomes now another link to the suspect, because it's not random. It's that location for a reason. It's a matter of figuring out what that is.
You're saying suspect singular. Is there, you think it was one person? Is there a possibility it could have been more than one individual involved in this?
I'm not going to exclude anything, but yeah, I believe it's one person.
Is there a chance Thelma would have known the suspect? Can you comment on that at all? Or the person who...
And again, I'm not trying to keep an open mind with these types of investigations. We look at every possibility, but I can tell you there's nothing to suggest that.
Okay. And just to confirm, when the hunter found the remains, it was only when you did your testing that you found it to be Thelma Krull, or was there some other piece of evidence that made you assume it might have been her, or made you believe it might have been her?
There was other evidence. Obviously, when these types of things happen, our agencies communicate, and we start to look at each other's missing persons who are unaccounted for. That started very early. Of course, we get wind of that, and we start communicating with them. I can tell you that we were involved within the second day in terms of this, and very soon afterwards in terms of getting more involved. It was very early in November when our office became involved, and there were other indicators that this may be her, but the finality of it doesn't come until you have that DNA piece.
Between the time period where the remains were found and it's confirmed that they were of Thelma Krull, can you just walk through the steps of what had to happen to get that confirmation?
The biggest piece in any one of these cases that we're dealing with, obviously, identity is a huge challenge or concern. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is ultimately responsible for establishing that, and they are certainly not ones that are going to state something or do it lightly unless it's absolutely known. And in this case, there was a number of steps taken in terms of involving local experts, in terms of forensic odontologists, forensic anthropologists, in terms of seeking input in terms of comparison. So, we had our suspicions, and again, that's not confirmed until we get that DNA back.
When was it confirmed that it was that?
Yesterday. Last night.
Last night.
Correct.
You said that this confirmed she was a victim of a homicide. Do you have any sense of when she would have been killed? Was it shortly after her disappearance?
In terms of what we know, I can't really tell you more than you already know. I know you've been here with our past releases, and you've heard, what we know. If we knew those pieces of it, it would be easier. But we just don't know that. Anything else would be kind of speculation on my account.
Did it look like what happened at this remote location, or somewhere else?
Again, that's very difficult to tell. Certainly, and I've said this before, we didn't have a crime scene at the location in terms of a violent murder that's going to occur outdoors somewhere that it didn't happen, and I think you guys know that.
Is this area she was found, is it common for hunters to go there? Do you have any indication if it's a popular spot?
I think it is a location where hunters certainly will go. Any wooded areas, I think that time of year, you get 30 kilometers outside the city, I think most of them are probably focused on it. I think so.
We'll look at taking just a couple more questions, please.
Is this an area that's still, police are still searching? Have you got what you needed from that site? Or
We are not still searching. I can tell you that RCMP Forensic Services and the units I mentioned searched it extensively upwards of probably that first week, and then we took over that investigation from, I think it was November 6th and on, based on what we had learned at that point. We've had our forensic services members out there as well that have conducted searches. The RCMP Hasty team, as well as our ground search and recovery teams and cadaver dogs have been doing extensive searches of that area. We are complete. Our search of that area is done. It's been done for some time.
How many tips would you say you've received over the almost 3.5 years? I think last update was around 400. I mean, how many overall did you end up getting?
I think we're north of 450 at this point, and they've never really stopped, maybe slowed down. Every time something like this happens and we appear, obviously it generates new information, and that's the hope of being here. So they continue.
And again, how does it feel as a unit, just something you've been working so hard on, just to get such a crucial piece here? What does that mean to the unit here? How do you feel about it?
Well, we're certainly happy. I mean, we know what this means in terms of an investigative piece that will move something forward. And we are hoping and we are looking at this in a positive light, that this will move towards some answers for the family, for the community, to figure out what happened. This is a bizarre set of circumstances, and we all want that. As much as it's a negative result, I'm glad for the family that they have some degree of finality in terms of no longer wondering where she is.
We'll look at one last question.
Families often say that the unknown or not knowing what happened to the loved one is perhaps the worst thing. Is that motivating for you all as investigators in this case to try and provide that sense of closure, even if it is, a terrible outcome?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, any one of these investigations that we start on, some become more obvious and simple, if you use that word in that context. It's more obvious what happened. Others are much more challenging. Of course, anytime you see families go through struggle and strife and go through what you're mentioning in terms of not knowing what happened, those are all motivating factors in terms of us trying to figure out what happened. It really doesn't change, this one from the next one. When we get the efforts that we put forward are really the same. We just want to bring answers to as many of these files and cases when people die as we can.
Thanks.
Thank you.